So, the Book of the Dead is the European name for an African text that was called Perdium Heru, or the chapters of coming forth by day. The words that the soul was to say in order to come forth by day. What I mentioned on Tuesday is that the so-called pyramid texts in the tomb of Unas are the oldest religious texts ever recorded on the planet. And in those religious texts, those spiritual texts, they speak of a soul, that human beings had a soul. So the very first people to conceive of a concept of God, a creator, a supreme being, were African people. They identified the fact that human beings had a soul and that there was a process for the judgment or the salvation of the soul. And there is a specific place where the souls of the deceased go to be reborn, in heaven where they go to be reborn. So these concepts that we find in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all came out of Kemet. So the books coming forth by day are words that were inscribed on papyri or on the walls of tombs. In the case of Karakamin's tomb, in the second pillared hall, we have over 70 chapters for the book of coming forth by day. So just think about this. Just imagine this. That death is a hell of a thing, right? So you die, and part of the Kemetic process of the journey of the soul, or the process for which that soul has to come forth into a new day. Coming forth into a new day means being born again. In the Kemetic concept, in the African concept, there is no death. There is no heaven or hell. You come back. We've always come back. We come back into a new day, a new life. And so there are certain things that you have to say in order to prepare your soul for that journey from one dimension of death to life. So the whole concept of the hall, coming into the hall of Ma'at, where the soul must declare its innocence, where the heart of the deceased, is weighed opposite the scale of Ma'at. Ma'at is that Kemetic principle, the Kemetic force, the feminine force, who represents the principles of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. So in that hall of Ma'at, the soul of the deceased must recite the 42 admonitions of Ma'at, 42 declarations of innocence, right? And some of those declarations they may sound a little familiar to you. Some of these declarations are, I have not spoken ill, I have not killed, I have not committed adultery, I have not polluted myself, I have not polluted the land, I have not stolen, I have not done these things against others. You declare your innocence as you stand before God, as you stand before, in this particular instance, as you stood before Asar on the day of your judgment. And then those declarations were recorded in the book of judgment by Jehuti. And if one were true to these 42 declarations of innocence, which were distilled by Jews into the 10 commandments, then you would understand that there's a profound difference between a declaration of innocence. I have not stolen. I have not committed adultery. I have not robbed, as opposed to a commandment, thou shalt not do this, which means if you're commanded to do something, it means that you don't have the good sense to know not to do it. But a declaration of innocence says that you've grown up in an environment where you know, as a way of life, you've been taught from the very beginning that these are things that human beings don't do. All right? So you're manifesting your humanity, and on that day of judgment, you come before Ma'at and you declare your innocence. And if your heart, which is weighed opposite the feather Ma'at, is as light as a feather, that's where the concept comes from, then it means that you have lived a righteous life. You are declared Ma'at Keru, or true of voice. And then you are led by Heru, the son of Asar and Aset, into the hall where you meet his father, Asar, who sits on the throne of judgment. So that scene, which you see in many papyri, the papyrus of Unefer and the papyrus of Ani, you see Heru taking the soul of the deceased by the hand and leading them to his father, who is sitting on the throne of judgment. That should remind you of the verse in, I forget what verse it is, but it's a verse in the Bible that says, none comes to the Father except through me, right? So if you knew our spiritual traditions, then you would understand where the Bible came from. The Bible is nothing but a distillation of African spiritual traditions. So spirituality is profoundly different from religion, right? And both are means by which a people attempt to reconnect with a source which you cannot see, but expresses itself in everything, right? So in Kemet, that spiritual manifestation of the Creator was known as Neteru, which is where we have derived the word nature. So it is nature that is the source It is nature that is a visible manifestation of the unseen presence of the Creator. Nature creates everything. So if you look at this particular society right now, who is anti-nature? Who is destroying the environment? Who disrespects the environment, right? And that tells you who is aligned to the Creator and who is not. Case closed.